Greetings. My name is David Jonah again. I'm one of the Pride Bands Alliance Board of Directors. I also am a member of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI committee. This second segment, or this second training video, takes you to the grow and thrive phases of the playbook. So in the grow phase, this is where we develop and build your DEI committee. The content of this section here, as you see, is we will focus on recruiting your 20% of your leadership team and building your case for funding if necessary, your communication plan, stakeholders, dashboard, and toolkit, and programming your internal and external events, and also measuring your key accomplishments. Metrics becomes quite important to really understand the impact, the outcomes, and the value of your DEI committee. So before we launch or get into our grow stage or phase, what you wanted to make sure is do a little bit of a kind of check the box as far as have you done and completed all the items of prep activities in the pre-launch and the launch phases. If you have, then what you will see in the growth stage is those topics I just shared, but also in the growth stage is when you will possibly experience growing pains. Things may become a little bit stormy as there are other people joining, meaning more voices, more diversity in thoughts, which sometimes creates some tension, sometimes it's healthy tension that we welcome. Our community members may decide to leave the committee because the direction of that committee may not align with their personal goals. The purpose and the focus of the committee really should be anchored around the vision and goals of the organization at large and not any individual members. And sometimes the committee should focus on checking in with members on their kind of DEIAB satisfaction priorities and interests as well. You've seen this progression model previously already in the pre-launch and launch phase. The questions remain the same, but starting in slide 44 here, the pillars remain the same, but the activities or examples of them may be different. And what you will notice is the example activities really demonstrate a maturation of your DEI committee. There will be more kind of poignant and impactful and also more sensitive types of activities, sometimes lead to more welcoming of vulnerabilities and sharing of thoughts and stories, which is what you want as you grow your DEI committee. So what you want to do is list and brainstorm with your group and team, what are you doing for each as far as activities in support of the 5 pillars. Recruiting your 20%, this is just a saying that we always say, the 80%, 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle is that 20% of your team will be responsible for 80% of the work, meaning that not every team members will be active. So how do we really target recruiting 20% of your kind of committee members? So this is where we will go into how to do that. There are some suggestions, and here's a worksheet to improve your chances of getting a yes when you ask a potential volunteer to be involved in your DEI committee. Do you know this member personally or through band network? What are you asking this member to do? People always need to know what they are getting into, their role, expectations, time commitments, and so on. Does this role align to anything that they do on the job or day-to-day job, or it aligns to something that they're passionate about within your band? What are some of the things they're passionate about? Because you wanted to give them an assigned role that they really can leverage their skills and talent, but also the passion. Is that a job description? Is important to tell people, but they need to also review that to make sure before they commit to whatever you're asking them to volunteer for. So these are just questions that you really wanted to ask and think about, and also ask yourself, it might be a need for you to write a job description. Slide 47, this is just a little, a nice little table here that tells you that it's great when someone say yes, they would love to volunteer and get involved. But when they don't say yes, don't give up. Sometimes definitely say thanks, but you wanted to also begin to onboard your yeses. What you would like to do is maybe ask them to maybe not participate on an ongoing basis, but more of an ad hoc basis. Maybe they can only offer X number of minutes or hours or a certain skill set. Take opportunity to leverage those skill set and whatever time that the volunteer can give you. Even if they absolutely say no, yes, thank them, but also check back at a certain time in the future because the situation may change. So don't give up. And then as far as requesting for funds, you might already have an annual budget and forecasting process that goes with your board of directors kind of work. So this is more of making sure that there is an allocation of projected funds for your DEI committee work. Now, this is going to be different for every member band. The DEI committee may sit within one of the existing committees already. It may be a newly formed committee that has their own kind of like separate funding request process and managed and tracked differently. So these are things that you can ask the board if you're not already on the board. As far as asking for funding, goes across for any committee asking for funding, is how does your band fund? Like, what's the process? What do you need the funds for? What events? What type of events types? How do you know that the members would want these types of events that you're producing? And is there any opportunity to partner with other nonprofits to help defray the cost, etc.? So these are just questions to consider as you are putting your business case for funding requests. And here's a list of questions where you see that what's the benefit for the members? Who else can sponsor this particular program or event or initiative? What are the resources needed? Who will participate? What's the value it brings to the band? Will there be any public exposure? And here, benefits, value, list internal stakeholders. You can go through this list and think through what you need to do to fund what you are asking for. Communications. So this is where if you don't have the expertise on communications, we give you some toolkit, or you should consider creating the toolkit. And here's the desired outcome, where the community communication lead, which is one of the roles that I mentioned previously, may put together a communication set of templates, marketing and communications materials. You might partner with the director of marketing and communications if you have that role on your board. There's also various ways to communicate as far as different channels. So this walk you through a typical communication plan, where it's always helpful to plan ahead to know who your audience, what's the key messages that you want to convey, what's the so what factor of this message, and then how is this message unique to a particular audience, and do you know the audience well? What's the call to action for the person reading this communication, and what's the preference on the channels? A plan should consist something that looks like this. Is the list of tasks with assigned owners and suggestive dates. And then here are some communication writing tips on slide 56 that this is great to use as a guiding principles. And the things that we say must do's. So here are some do's. And also we will close out that and move into programming. This is always the fun section of the playbook, where you have types of programming. There's internal programming and there's external programming. This is where creativity comes in, and also ideas that you can solicit from your members. And here are examples that you can use as a way to get into the discussion. And if you just need help with planning an event, we just give you a suggested what we call DEIAB event in a box. 90 days out, what are some of the tasks that you should consider doing? 60 days out, 30 days out, 2 weeks out, and you see the rest here in these two slides. This hopefully will be helpful for all types of events, not just events related to DEI. This next section is sometimes not the easiest to facilitate. It's because you do need to know how you're going to track and what would you like to track. These are suggested metrics and outcomes that align to the 5 pillars. So in band culture, you see here some examples, and you can read across. You read through it and see if you want to tailor it, but these are suggestions of what metrics and key performance indicators, if you want to call them KPIs, that you wanted to track. Additional ways or metrics to consider include member engagement, member turnover rate, meaning that do people come and leave your band, and is it related to anything that DEI committee could consider addressing? Do the people feel safe and welcome? The word belonging in this playbook is important. Do people feel belonging? Just because there may be an LGBTQ music or organization, it doesn't mean that everyone feels welcome. Do you have interviews to ask people why they might not want to return to band? What might be some access issues, which is the part of the A that you wanted to really dive into? Do people feel satisfied? What is the satisfaction level? And you might already have a member survey on an annual basis that you share with your membership. Take those inputs and help you to formulate your next year goals and initiatives. Here are some things to measure or not to measure. So these are some other ways to think about what else should you consider measuring. There may be things that are not mentioned in these slides. These next set of slides give you a lot of ideas, but also give you a little bit more structure. Everything is kind of in a ranking where it's like an A, B, C, D, and each is assigned a point value. So there are sections here highlighted in green font, like engagement. Under engagement, you have these kind of light blue metrics, including member share, mind share, heart share. I love these kind of nomenclature that we use. And we might also address the development side, other events, attendance, sponsorship. Sponsorship could be like grants that you receive in support of DEI, and there are points assigned to them. And accomplishment, what are the areas of impact metrics and so on. And then the sentiment, which is the favorability of your DEI committee, and there's an overall scores. You can play around with this scale and some of the suggestive ways that we rank them, but this is another a little bit more sophisticated way using numerical values to help kind of put a number, quantify the value and impact of your DEI committee. You certainly can just take the alternative, which can be a simpler approach to track and report on simply just band membership, event attendance, participation in DEI AB programs, events, and member satisfaction and a sense of belonging. You track and you measure, but it's also important to communicate out and present visually what your accomplishments are. So here are some ways to think about how you present the data in an example here as a DEIAB communication dashboard to trend your current year goals to your previous year goals and your next year goals. There's another version here where you can see how you have the title of your committee with the goals and the focus report template here that you can document your areas of focus and next year's goal. Here's another way to look at it from a quarterly basis. All these are just example. There's ways that you can use the red, yellow light, green light indicator to show alignment with heat map and also suggestive, track ways of tracking relating to recruiting, community. These are really the 5 pillars that you see. And here is another example of a quarterly executive summary template, where there may be the 5 pillars and what are you doing for each of those topics or the activities that you are tracking. Now, here is the Thrive section, where this is more of aspirational goals, where you feel like your DEI committee is mature enough with the right core leadership team and a healthy kind of team of volunteers. Then you want to really push the DEI committee to think about how do you take it from grow to thrive. So in this section, you will see the progression model, but there will be different activities for those 5 pillars. You will have what you should measure and how you ramp up your metrics. And then pulling all together, you can start looking at brainstorming, prioritizing, documenting, and aligning. Then you think forward about talent planning. What are the ABC of allies? Now you're bringing allies to your community? How do you expand to other areas within your band? And then leading and inspiring. So what you see here in the thrive phase, you want to do a check box here, the checking of the boxes in from the growth stage that we just left. Do you have a funding process in place? Do you have the communication processes in place? Do you plan and execute programming on an annual basis? Do all that before you go into the thrive phase. And this slide 74, you see the same set of pillars and areas of focus, but now your examples of activities for each of the pillars will be different, more sophisticated, involving a lot more outside of your member band, but into your community. You are leveraging and leaning on your allies and supporters. You're also looking at professional development of your members, but also autistic staff. You want to align your DEI committee with your band strategic plan. So you see now is a lot more elevated, a lot more thought to put into some of the activities when you're in the thrive phase. Slide 76 is no longer just looking at this year, but now we're looking at multi-year plan. When you're looking at multi-year plan, you're really doing a strategy session by brainstorming. So here are some brainstorming prep. Just kind of outline some of the activities and things to do when you have this type of discussion where you are thinking about multiple years plan. Then on slide 77, this is what the output of your brainstorming should be prioritized. So this list of questions are important questions to ask your DEI committee as you think through your multi-year plan priorities. I won't go through each of these questions. When you read them, I think it makes sense and pretty self-explanatory, but this is what you're needing to make sure you have answer to when you complete that exercise of brainstorming. If you haven't seen this 4 quadrants, what this 4 quadrants, the purpose of this 4 quadrants is that when you come out of the brainstorming sessions, there may be so many ideas and initiatives. You wanted to start focusing and really look at the priorities of all of those ideas. So this is where we will put certain ideas and initiative into one of the 4 buckets. How important is it? And is it urgent or not urgent? So what you really ideally want is focusing on quadrant number 1, those initiative ideas that are most important to your members and band and most urgent. And you focus less on quadrant number 4, the initiatives that are not important, not urgent. You wanted to document your DEI committee because there's a lot of discussion, but you want to really outline it in some sort of document. And here's a suggested template. What is the initiative name? What is the scope of that initiative? What will be year 1, year 2, year 3 goals in support of the scope of that initiative? I hope that lays out the layout here makes perfect sense. It keeps your thoughts organized and keeps your team focused on what you should be focusing on for year 1, 2, and 3. Here's another example of professional development. Same template, same format. This could be another way to put the template together where you're seeing across multiple initiatives, but it's actually aligned to the 5 pillars that you see in the various columns. Talent planning assessment. This is where you think about who's going to take on the next chair or co-chair role in any of the core leadership teams, because you have to make sure you can sustain, particularly in a nonprofit environment. It is very easy to really not have someone to give that baton to, or things may not be documented well, or there's no archival or reference documents that because you don't have the discipline of documenting thoroughly. So this is where you wanted to identify and recruit additional talent so that way you can have a succession plan in place. How do we do that? This is a leader development assessment here. What you will see is if you have a potential person who might serve right now in certain role, what are their strengths? And when they leave your DEI committee what strengths need to fill and what development needs does that person have. So it's a way to triangulate the data or the information and the characteristic and leadership traits of the various potential leaders that you want to put in place. So you will see this as an example of the list of leadership competencies that you've already seen from the pre-launch phase, the list of names, the section or team and their current role. You see the red, yellow, green light indicator. This is to look at the kind of the heat map to say that particular person, does that person have expertise in something or offer some best practices and they are able to coach someone? That's a green light. Yellow is, does this person have experience but may not be recognized as an expert, but they could benefit from be in this leadership role as they can develop for themselves and be able to learn how to coach others. The red is when they have limited experience with this particular skill set and they have a strong need, or it takes them a little bit more time before they can actually serve in the leadership role. So that's something that you want to put in the pipeline, but may not want to name that person as a leader just yet. Allyship. This is where you want to branch out and really target the people who may not be aware of the work that you're doing and bringing allies from various communities. Here we just go through what you need to know, the A's, the B's, and the C's of allyship. So here is just to help you to kind of make sure that what is the definition of ally? How would you want that person to do, what role do they have, and how do you want them to champion for your cause? And then who needs allies is the last slide. And then how best to recruit allies is the slide here that you see in slide 90. And then this one may not be relevant to your member chapter, but I turned this around a little bit. Instead of expanding through chapters, what you might want to do is expand the scope of your DEI committee to doing more than what you're currently doing to impact the community. And then lastly, how do you actually lead and inspire others? This is some of the characteristic traits that you should remind people. All this should be self-explanatory, be an active listener, be able to empower people, need to choose your battles and keep people engaged and give away confidence.